fact, first of all, that it is January 27th, so it is Holocaust International Day, and 80 years since the liberation of Auschwitz. So an important day on the sort of global calendar, and good to hear that many different organizations are marking this day as fewer and fewer survivors are with us. So, okay, tonight we're talking about what does Judaism say about reproductive rights. So again, I'm going to share my screen with you. What I'm hoping to do is to spend most of the time actually talking about probably Jewish texts around abortion, but also a little bit touching on some other topics as well. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, and just... Okay, so what does Judaism say about reproductive rights? So the first thing is just what does reproductive rights even include? Reproductive rights include the right to make decisions about your body and sexuality and to access the information and services you need to do so. Reproductive rights are a set of human rights that are essential for women to enjoy their full rights. So sort of a little bit of a definition there. What it includes, and it includes all of these different things. So access to contraception and birth control, access to abortion when it's legal, fertility treatments, prenatal care, sexual health, reproductive health information, freedom from violence, freedom from discrimination when making reproductive decisions, family planning, and equal relationships between men and women in matters of reproduction and sexual relations. So we're not going to go through all of these, but we are going to sort of see what Judaism does bring to some of these topics in terms of a discussion looking at Jewish texts. The very first one we're going to look at is actually from Bereshit, from the first chapter. And this is the famous, be fruitful and multiply. Peru, urvu, umilu et haaretz. God blessed them. This is after the creation of the beings, and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and rule over it, from the fish of the sea to the birds of the heavens and all that creeps on the earth. So the first thing is that this is considered a mitzvah. There. So having children is considered a mitzvah. It is considered then a commandment, not mitzvah as in a good deed, but as in something we're commanded to do. And in Mishnah Yevamot, it says a man may not neglect the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply unless he already has children. And then what does it mean? Beit Shammai, here's where we always have our dispute between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. Beit Shammai say one fulfills this mitzvah with two males, and Beit Hillel say a male and a female. As it is stated, male and female, God created them. So according to Jewish law, Peru urvu is a mitzvah, a commandment, and one is to try to have a boy and a girl, since God created a male and a female. So why does, going ahead. I don't know how to go backwards on this. Just a second. Oh, I apologize. Stop share. Okay. Sorry about this. Trying to just get this back on. I might have to go through the whole thing. I'm not sure. Just okay. Oh, for some reason, I don't know how to go back. So I'm going to go all the way through until, okay, sorry about that. Okay, so we've got the fact that anyways, that this is a mitzvah to have children. However, contraception is allowed under certain circumstances, according to the Orthodox, and in most cases in the liberal denominations, for health, financial reasons, etc. There's quite a few reasons where contraception is allowed or encouraged, even probably one would say, in the liberal denominations. The second part of the commandment, though, seems to limit procreation until the earth is filled. Now, if you remember that there was be fruitful and multiply, peru urvu, and fill the earth and subdue it. So this is somebody I know, Dr. Daniel Barry, and he wrote a paper, Does God Command Birth Control? I can share this with you later if you wanted to read his whole paper. But the idea is that he's saying, yes, we are told to be fruitful and multiply. However, there are conditions or limitations on this mitzvah because it says fill the earth. So when the earth is filled, in other words, when there is such a population, does that mean that there's then a limit to having children? So it's sort of an interesting take. He's the only person that I know of that has sort of thought of this verse in that way. Okay, so we do have it out there then that having children is considered a mitzvah. In Judaism, it is part of Jewish law. And we're going to see how Israel deals with it a little bit later, because obviously there are women and men that are infertile and are not able to have children naturally on their own. But before we go into that more, I wanted to go into texts that inform decisions around abortion, because this is really where this topic has been sort of really brought to our attention since Roe versus Wade was overturned in the United States. So what are the Jewish texts? So if we go back to the Torah, we find a verse that says, should men brawl and collide with a pregnant woman, and there is some kind of, and there's different ways of interpreting this. Some translations say a miscarriage results. Some say our fetus come out, but there be no mishap. So we're looking at this word ason to sort of see what that might mean. But these two men are fighting. They accidentally hit this pregnant woman. There is some kind of a miscarriage that happens. The one responsible shall be fined according to the woman's husband imposes upon him. He shall pay by the reckoning. So what does this have to do with abortion? And we're going to get to that. So first of all, we want to look at this word ason. What is this ason? And in most cases in the Torah, this is understood as death. But then the question we have to ask is, well, who is the one who dies here, right? Is it talking about the fetus or the woman? In Onkelos's Aramaic translation, so a very early translation of the Torah, it said, if men contending strike a woman with child and she miscarries, but does not die, he shall be fined, as the husband of the woman may fine him, and he shall give according to the sentence of judgment. But if she dies, you shall give life for a life. So almost all readers of the biblical Hebrew read the death as occurring as the woman. The woman is the subject and not the fetus. Therefore, causing the fetus to die is not considered a capital offense in Jewish law. So there's two possibilities. You either have to pay and you're liable for a capital offense. In the Eitz Chaim Chumash, it says the Torah demands only a monetary payment for the fetus in contrast to life for the woman. So this is after a number of poskim have looked at these texts, and they've come up with this as sort of the ruling. The fetus is not considered a full-fledged human being, and abortion is not murder. Applying this to all forms of miscarriage, Jewish law requires different forms of mourning for a fetus than for someone born alive. So because of this text, there's actually very nuanced opinions about abortion. And we will see that right across the Jewish spectrum, that abortion is allowed because the fetus is not considered a full human being until the time of birth. In another Mishnah, now this one's going to sound really, really terrible, but this is what it says in Mishnah Olot. If a woman is having trouble giving birth, they cut up the child in her womb and bring it forth limb by limb, because her life comes before the life of the child. But if the greater part has come out, in other words, the baby is partially born, one may not touch it, for one may not set aside one person's life for that of another. But we see this, this says that the mother's life is considered the priority, which is very different than what we find in, say, the Roman Catholic religion, where they often reverse that and say the child is more important. In another Mishnah here, we see, in the case of a pregnant woman who's taken by the court to be executed, the court does not wait to execute her until she gives birth. Rather, she is killed immediately. But with regard to a woman taken to be executed who sat on the travailing chair in the throes of labor, then the court waits to execute her until she gives birth. So these two texts that we're looking at here then are a text that basically say that the fetus is not a full human being until the baby is born. And in the Gemara, it actually says, Pashita gufahi. Isn't it obvious that the court executes the pregnant woman rather than waiting? After all, it is part of her body. The Gemara answers, it was necessary for the Mishnah to teach this, as it might enter your mind to say that since it's written, and if men strive together and hurt a woman with child, so that her offspring depart, he shall be fined as the woman's husband shall place upon him. So going back to that original text from Exodus, the fetus is considered to be the property of the husband. If this is, one could say these things. If so, the court should wait until she gives birth before executing her and not cause him to lose the fetus. Consequently, the Mishnah teaches us, so it's saying if you were to interpret the Torah passage in this way, it's wrong. And so that's why the Mishnah teaches us that the court does not take this factor into account. So unless she's in labor, they would execute the woman. Now, not that there was very many executions, but they give this as an example that that while the woman is pregnant, it's part of her body. So these are just some texts that I'm bringing to inform this discussion that we're going to have. So before we go on to the next part, I don't know if anybody has any comments about any of those texts. They're kind of difficult to read, some of them, but if you do, then just speak up. Okay. All right. So what we're seeing then in all of these texts leading up to this point is that the fetus is not a fully fledged human being. Abortion therefore is allowed, and it's allowed right across the Jewish denominational spectrum. So when there was the court decision that overthrew Roe versus Wade in United States, the rabbinical organizations came out with statements that are quite long and involved, but I'm going to just bring sort of some of the parts just to see how they were dealing with this. So this is the Central Conference of American Rabbis, so in other words, the Reform Rabbis organization. The Central Conference of American Rabbis condemns in the strongest terms the Supreme Court decision in Dobbs versus Jackson, Women's Health Organization, and deplores the reversal of the precedent set a half-century ago in Roe versus Wade. Roe guaranteed a right to reproductive health care, enabling tens of millions of pregnant people to terminate pregnancies that threaten their well-being. Now we face, and it's even interesting, this language, a terrifying future. Hundreds of millions of Americans in about half of the 50 states will lack access to safe and legal abortion care. And when I looked it up, as of this month in the United States, there's actually 13 states that have made abortion illegal, and many, many more states. I think it's about another 16 states that have severe limitations on them. The CCR statement continued. I brought a couple of other quotes from it. Abortion access is part of comprehensive health care. Overturning Roe versus Wade will not stop abortions. It will increase the occurrence of illegal, dangerous abortions, causing unnecessary death and suffering. We know that low-income women and all gender non-conforming individuals will suffer the greatest burden of state abortion bans triggered by a reversal of Roe versus Wade. So here they're saying that, you know, this law is going to affect.
Hello, Elizabeth here, and today I'm going to show you how to hand embroider.
Okay. How this law is going to negatively impact, especially the lower social economic class of women, because they would not have the money to be able to travel to places where abortion could be accessed. This decision violates the First Amendment's guarantee of the right to free exercise of religion for Jews and others whose religious traditions, like ours, permit abortion. Moreover, this ruling is a violation of the principle of the separation of church and state, a cherished ideal of our unique American democracy. And then I just brought this ending of the CCAR statement. In the strongest terms, CCAR rabbis call on Congress to enact federal legislation guaranteeing a right to safe and legal abortion for all within our nation's borders. Reform rabbis will continue to oppose state laws that restrict abortion rights. And this is where it's interesting. The CCAR will support its members who are in need of abortion care wherever they live, just as Reform rabbis will be present for members of the communities they serve and for all Americans in need of abortion care again, wherever they live. The CCAR supports our rabbis who will now choose to participate in civil disobedience, if necessary, to save the lives of and ensure access to health care for pregnant people. And again, this terrifying moment in American history. There was a discussion at the Toronto rabbinic group, and it was discussed that if there were people in the United States that needed access to abortion, that our colleagues in the States could refer them to us, where we would make arrangements here in Canada or help to facilitate it. So I mean, they really are going to do whatever they can if they're in states that do not allow abortion. Now, if we think that this is more of a reform or a liberal position, I also am bringing just part of the statement that was put out by the Union of Orthodox Jewish Congregations. And just to see, now, obviously, they take a slightly different viewpoint, but the Orthodox Union is unable to either mourn or celebrate the U.S. Supreme Court's overturning of Roe versus Wade. We cannot support absolute bans on abortion at any time point in a pregnancy that would not allow access to abortion in life-saving situations. Okay, so again, the Orthodox are saying that they will not support bans on abortion because there needs to be access in certain situations. Similarly, we cannot support legislation that does not limit abortion to situations in which medical, however, including mental health professionals, affirm that carrying the pregnancy to term poses real risk to the life of the mother. So they did include mental health as well. So it's not just if the mother is physically health compromised, but that also mental health would play a role in determining whether or not an abortion could take place. As people of faith, we see life as a precious gift granted to us and maintained within us by God. Jewish law places paramount value on choosing life and mandate, not as a right, but as a responsibility, safeguarding our own lives and the lives of others by behaving in a healthy and secure manner, doing everything in our power to save lives and refraining from endangering others. And then again, another continuation of this statement, yet that same mandate to preserve life requires us to be concerned for the life of the mother. Jewish law prioritizes the life of the pregnant mother over the life of the fetus. So again, going back to those earlier texts, such that where the pregnancy critically endangers the physical health or mental health of the mother, an abortion may be authorized, if not mandated by halakha, and should be available to all women, irrespective of their economic status. Legislation and court rulings federally or in any state that absolutely ban abortion without regard for the health of the mother would literally limit our ability to live our lives in accordance with our responsibility to preserve life. The extreme polarization around and politicization of the abortion issue does not bode well for a much needed, nuanced result. Human life, the value of everyone created in the divine image, is far too important. So again, the Orthodox, yes, preserving life is an important value, and that means that the life of the mother is paramount. I looked up just to see sort of Canada's approach, and we do know that that here in Canada that people have access to abortion. And the reason being was because of some of these statistics. If you look on Canada's governmental website, they actually say that Canada believes in the right that women have to decide what to do with their bodies because of these situations around the world. So in a number of developing countries, on average, only 55% of women who are married or in a union make their own decisions about sexual relations, the use of contraceptives, and reproductive health services. So almost half the women in the world, in the developing countries, make decisions about their reproductive care. An estimated 257 million women who want to avoid pregnancy are not using safe and modern methods. A quarter of all women are not able to say no to sex. Contraceptive use is 53% lower among women who've experienced intimate partner violence. Each year, there are approximately 121 million unintended pregnancies, and about 60% of these end in abortion. And 45% of abortions performed globally are unsafe, leading to millions of women dying as a result. So Canada's approach is they look around at these statistics around the world and have decided that we have easy access here to reproductive care. I brought this here because Israel is very interesting because of the halacha, and that right across the, again, all forms of Judaism say that abortion is permitted and sometimes even mandated. And so in Israel, abortion is relatively easy and accessible to get. A woman goes before a committee. I think it's a small committee, but something like 99.6% of all the women that have gone to ask for an abortion actually receive it. So it's almost never, ever denied. Why? Because of the lenient and nuanced stance of rabbinical authorities in the Jewish law tradition. And we're talking here then the rabbinate in Israel. This stance, together with Israel's post-Holocaust biblical culture of be fruitful and multiply, again, so going back to that original verse from Bereshit, also underlies its high rates of medically assisted reproduction for the treatment of infertility, including pre-implantation genetic diagnosis of fertilized eggs. So the one thing is that abortion is easily accessible in Israel, but so are all of the other forms in order to have children for those that have trouble. It's basically free. So things that we might have to pay a lot more money for here in Canada, like IVF treatments and that, are basically free in Israel because Israel wants to have, and it's a culture that actually supports having children. And so in Israel, even within the secular communities, that women have more children on average than in other developed countries. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing that here and just, yeah, sorry, I'm just sort of throwing all these texts at you, but nobody stopped me, so.
Rabbi,
any comments?
Yeah, can you clarify something that you just said about Israel? Women have to go before some sort of committee, even if 99.9% of people are granted the ability to have an abortion. Every pregnant person has to go before a committee before they are granted permission to go to have an abortion? Is that what you said?
Yes, yes.
And so it doesn't matter the circumstances?
Pardon? Oh,
Does
sorry.
it matter what the circumstances are?
As far as I know, everybody goes in front of a committee, but that's what I said. It's almost 100% allowed in every case that a woman goes.
That includes medical abortion as in addition to a traditional D&C or something like that? I mean, a medical abortion is just taking 2 pills, right? So a woman would have to go before a committee in order to gain access to that medication.
Okay, that I don't know about. I'm not sure. I would have to look that up then. That I don't know. Any other comments?
Rabbi, I had a question about the reform movement. You said that there was an understanding that people who needed an abortion in the States could, through the reform movement, even receive assistance in Canada. Did I understand that right?
Some of my colleagues actually discussed that if there was a need for people to come to Canada, that we would help to support that. But also within the United States, that they will make arrangements like rabbi to rabbi. If a rabbi's in a state and a congregant, say, needs to access an abortion and it's illegal in that state, that they are willing to, fight to make that happen.
But I understand it would just be for Jewish people, of course, right? It would, or not.
I think that would be up to the rabbi. I mean, obviously, if they were working in the community and there was, I can't tell you what any any individual rabbi might decide, but as a movement, we were
As a
willing to
movement, I
support
understand.
each other in
Yes.
terms of,
I
helping
understand.
people access.
Do you know if that has actually happened?
It has, I can't give you all the details right
Oh,
now,
okay, that's
but
fine.
I am connecting with my colleagues in the States more right now, so I will actually ask that question.
Thank you.
Any other? Okay. All right, so this has been part of this sort of 3-week sort of like mini little series about, what does Judaism say about these topics that are sort of current and in the news. And as I said at the beginning, it's not like I'm an expert on any of these fields, but I could at least bring this Jewish perspective to it with some Jewish texts. And, like just seeing even the text that I brought tonight, it's like not always obvious how a Torah text is going to be able to inform a discussion that ends up in forming halakha. And so that was why I wanted to sort of walk you through those texts, as horrible sounding as some of them were. I think the one thing that I should add to this, and that is that just because abortion is allowed and in some cases mandated because of the health of the mother or a particular situation, that does not mean that it is something to celebrate under any, in any way, that this is a painful decision, that all life and all potential life is still considered, of such high value in Judaism. And so, it's not a decision that we would want anybody to take lightly. But we do believe that people should have access, that it is part of Jewish law that we have access to reproductive rights in a lot of these different categories.
And what about like there was that part of the reproductive rights that was about family planning. So what does Judaism say? I mean, I guess you touched on you have to have a boy and a girl. But are there
Well,
other
that was considered the ideal.
Right.
Well, according to Beit Hillel, it was a boy and girl because God created males and females. According
Right.
to Beit Shammai, it was 2 males because Moses had 2 boys.
Okay.
Right. But as much as that's considered a mitzvah, a commandment, it's absolutely understood that there are lots of people that could choose not to have any children. And so there are statements, I could have brought something where like teachers will say that their students are equivalent to their children, and things like that. And also, I mean, the other thing is in Israel, adoption is something that's supported too. And there are a number of children in Israel where mothers have gone and adopted babies and young children from other countries, and they're 100%, accepted into Israeli society because, again, because of this mitzvah of having children.
I just wanted to sort of comment the fact that that we're able to listen to what you're teaching and look at what Canada says, and most of us don't have a lot to say about it because we live in a place, and at least right now in a time when this is not an issue for women in this country, a legal issue, a societal issue, an individual issue, certainly, but legally, Canada, well, our laws actually doesn't specifically refer to abortion. It refers to reproductive rights, which I think was a very good way to do things. But it's not that long ago that it was a huge issue here. Certainly, when I was a younger woman, We had all of the protests, the violent protests against doctors like Henry Morgentaler.
Morgentaler, yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, when Stephen Harper was in his ascendancy, he talked about banning abortion and then backtrack on that when he realized that would
I
have
remember that, yeah.
been not a smart move politically. I just actually, as I was listening tonight, looked up what Pierre Poilievre has to say about it. And he says, my government will not introduce or pass a law banning abortions. This was a couple months ago. But there are many other ways to support women who want to bring a child into the world. He does not believe that abortion should be the only option available to women faced with an unexpected pregnancy. And he is for making it easier, making adoption easier. So, you know, coming at it from a different angle. But I think, you know, the ease at which Roe v. Wade was overturned and things have changed so rapidly in the States is, you know, we need to pay attention to that. You know, you have to really, I think we have to be very aware of how precarious something like this can be because it is so politicized.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
That's
right now it's good here, you know, but stand on guard, I guess.
yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that, Karen. I just put in the chat about a book I read recently about this, and it's fascinating. It's not very long, and it's an American author who's dealing with it on the front lines of the abortion battles down here. And I highly recommend it if you want to read something good on the topic. But one of the things I did learn is that 80% of all abortions in the first trimester are medical abortions that are done through the abortion pills, and that Canada, there's a website based in Canada called Women of the Web, and they are helping women in the United States access abortion medication for first trimester abortions, and they're dealing with it on a very sensitive level. They're sending medications in plain packaging and all of these kinds of things that will circumvent the legal issues that women in many states are having. They're trying to pass laws, especially in the South, about people helping women who are seeking abortions. And now they want to charge, you know, if you go to your grandmother and say, you know, Booby, I need X number of dollars for an abortion, they can charge the grandmother, right, for aiding and abetting, so to speak. I mean, and there are all sorts of these laws, and there's hundreds of them coming out every single day. And I think Karen's right. We have to be on our toes because oftentimes this is a religious issue that is not our religious issue. It's somebody else's religious issue. And when religion and politics meet, it's very complicated and
Yes.
can be very ugly. So read up and help the women in your life, the pregnant people in your lives. They're there. And women want abortions for all sorts of reasons. It's none of our business to ask the questions. It's their business to seek out the answers.
Just going back what you said, John, Women of the Web, you said?
It's called Women of the Web.
Okay.
I can find I had the website on here before. I can send it to you. But it is fascinating because women from the United States are, and sometimes they're sending these medications to places in Europe, and then the Europeans are sending them back into the United States. So I don't know if anybody knows the story of the Jane Network from the 1960s. These were women both in Canada and the United States who worked underground to help women access abortions at penalty of their own safety and their own freedom. And there you go. It's called womenonweb.org, Lori. Okay, womenonweb.org. Abortion pill access by mail.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Right.
and it's run by Canadian women and Canadian doctors and all sorts of things. And you can access that and find out for yourself. But these are
Right.
all,
Never-
the Jane Network is starting up again. And this is just, but they're starting up again on the internet. So, you know, there's movies, there's books written about the Janes. It's a really fascinating time in history. And that has now moved back into the forefront for women in the United States who are having real issues.
I find both to what Karen and Don, what everybody's been saying, and Karen in particular about being on our guard for how easily this could be overturned in Canada, even, etc. I find it just fascinating. Yes, we all talk about Trump, you know, in the States is now like this, etc. But so many people in the States had to vote for him and had to agree with this, and it's such a divisive country now, and it's so scary that there are so many people, and I know people who I thought were on the same level as me on our thoughts and how we thought about things, and we just can't discuss politics because like it's just unbelievable. um it's just so scary. It really is.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, Dawn, for that information about that website. I'm definitely going to look that up. And it sounds like something that we should be supporting anyways in some way. Thank you.
There was a documentary film in 2022 about it called The Janes.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's on both sides of the border, the Janes. They started in Chicago, but there was definitely a Jane network in Southern Ontario, and that book, Looking for Jane, is a historical novel if you want to read it about it. But that's not actual history. That's a novel. All right. But you can absolutely find all sorts of things on the Janes, and the Janes are starting up again. They're just manifesting in a much more, you know, AI sort of way, and to bring it full circle.
Right. And certainly just understanding that, you know, where Judaism comes out on this issue means it is our responsibility to support these organizations or to support people then that are looking for access to abortion or whatever else they might need.
So I have a question. So are all streams of Judaism speaking out on abortion rights? Say
Yes, that's why I brought that part
Mhm.
of the statement by the Orthodox Union as well. Yes.
Okay. And
Yeah.
do they cite the rationale in Jewish liturgy and about that? Do they say it's that they say for religious reasons we believe?
Yes, it's because of the texts that we have starting in the Torah that basically say the fetus is not a full human being.
But I'm interested, the rabbis are saying that, but what about, say, for example, the conservative and the Orthodox members, like a follower, you know, Jews, are they all united on that? Or some of them, because a lot of them like vote Republican, right? So what is their view? Do we know?
Well, just because somebody votes one way doesn't mean that they agree on every single thing in that platform either. I mean, we have to, you know, appreciate that everything is more nuanced than that. So I can't tell you what any individual says. I can just tell you that across all of Judaism, right, that abortion is allowed and sometimes mandated, right?
I just wanted to say something about the reasons why women might want an abortion, and one of them is financial, and that speaks to me of the poor job we are doing in addressing income inequality, and that certainly does apply to Canada. It that shouldn't have to be one of the reasons why a woman would seek an abortion. She may want to have a child, but knows that it would create undue financial hardship, and so makes that very, very difficult decision to have an abortion. There's something wrong with the system if we can't support people families. And, you know, along the same lines, it's I'm not familiar with the details because I haven't had any sort of close experience in this, but I know that for people seeking fertility treatments and IVF, that it can be an extremely expensive process. And I know there's, you know, some insurance covers it, and I guess there is some coverage depending on the province. But my understanding is there's a limit to the coverage. So, you know, if the people who want us so badly not to terminate pregnancies would put that energy into making it easier for people who want to have children, seems like a better use of energy to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just the fact that the daycare fees have come down dramatically in this province takes one of those issues, like the financial issue,
Yeah.
and makes it a little bit easier for families
Yeah.
to have more than one child. Yeah.
Rabbi, you said something earlier, a little bit off topic, but you mentioned that in Israel, not only do they help them financially with all of these issues for women, but that they make adoption easier, and that they're trying to help even from other countries. Just out of curiosity, if they adopt, if I assume in Israel the child would still have to be converted to Judaism if in fact they're getting a child from somewhere else?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I was just curious, you know, do they then just say, okay, we'll make it even easier. You're raising the child Jewish, therefore they're Jewish and you don't have to. Okay.
No, no. I mean, there still is a conversion process,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
definitely Israel makes all of these things
Mhm.
any way that women can be more fertile, like they make it easier. So. Okay, somebody else was going to say something. Andrea.
I find it interesting that there are now insurance companies that are putting money towards gender reassignment, but not supporting people with infertility. I mean, we spend a lot of energy these days talking about people being in the right body, but we're not supporting the people who are just trying to, you know, conceive. And I think that for a lot of us, that we don't even think about what our rights are until they're taken away. And I think that's, you know, the US is certainly have sort of stirred something in us Canadians to say that this is fragile because, you know, if government has the right to sort of reassign what's allowed and not allowed, and politics play a role in how we're treating each other, this is hugely problematic.
Thank you. Yeah. Ed, is your hand up or
Yes, it is.
or is that from before?
No,
Okay.
no, actually, thank you, Rabbi. Okay, so I have a question, and I missed a little bit of your presentation, so I hope I'm not repeating the question. Okay, so if Christianity sprung from Judaism, and if Christianity recognizes the Old Testament, why is the Christian fundamentalist movement so anti-abortion?
I think,
How did that happen?
yeah,
If
I
it's
mean, I can't tell you all the details of that, why they prioritize
no,
the
but
fetus over the mother, even in many cases. But if you remember the first verse that I brought from Exodus, from the Torah, that there were different ways that one could interpret that verse.
okay.
And so we have taken the verse to mean that the woman dies, and that would be then a life for a life. In other words, capital punishment. But that the fetus is not the one that's dying in that case, where you could interpret it the other way. But Judaism has not done that. So
I just find it strange that I mean, obviously Christianity is different than Judaism, but there are certain core values, right, that they share with us.
well, there's some things we share and a lot that's different. So yeah.
I actually have a question. How, do you have any idea how Judaism views surrogacy?
I've worked with people that have actually used surrogates within the Jewish community, that's for sure. So I'm trying to think if I can't think of anything that I've actually read specifically about that, but definitely it's happening in the Jewish community. And I'm not the only rabbi that's worked with people that's the case. I know that.
Yeah, I just was wondering if the rabbis had a statement on it, the Reform
Right.
rabbis. Yeah.
Right. What I do know is that if okay, here's where it gets a little tricky. I was involved in one case where there was a surrogate mother. The egg was taken from the Jewish mother. The sperm was from the Jewish father. So in other words, but the woman couldn't carry the baby. So there was a surrogate that carried it. So genetically, this child was 100% the DNA of the Jewish parents that were going to raise the child. But because the woman that was the surrogate was not Jewish, that when I took that situation to my colleagues, they believed that the baby had to go through conversion. And that was my Reform colleagues. Now, that was quite a few years ago. I'm not sure if that would still be the case, but that completely surprised me because we knew genetically that this baby was fully Jewish. Like,
What was their rationale?
because the woman carrying the baby was not Jewish. And so they figured that the one that carried and nurtured it in the womb was not Jewish, and therefore the child had to go through a conversion. Okay, well, thank you for your comments and the information that you've brought, and hopefully, I don't know if you've participated in these 3 sessions, that it gives us a little bit more to work with in terms of Jewish perspective on some of these modern issues. So, okay, thank you. Have a good evening, everyone.